Two.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Thursday, August 3rd, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have sermons in the sky, it's QNA Thursday, and of course, commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone. How are you doing, and how was your Wednesday service last night? I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I haven't listened to it yet because it's still Wednesday afternoon for me, but I know that I'm definitely looking forward to the Wednesday service tonight too. If you haven't yet, go ahead, leave a comment and or leave a like to build our community, because I'm just really happy that the community is growing. We're getting great comments, great insights. I'm just happy for everyone joining us here every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up, support each other each and every day. Look at other people's comments. Really good stuff out there, and I hope that we'll be able to enhance this experience by liking others' comments and also responding to them too. But I really, really enjoy the comment section. I wish it was done in person. Like, in person is the best way to have conversation, discussion. But the comment section, you get a good idea of what people are thinking at this time. Sunday message title this week is Learn Only From Me. And like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed your service last night, and make sure to keep praying for your preachers and help them with really good feedback. So, I had an interesting two calls about movies this week, or actually within the last, within the last 4 hours, I got two calls about two different movies. And guess which ones? It's Barbie and Oppenheimer. Okay. So I got a friend, a non-member, a friend in Malaysia, posted on their IG that they went to go see Barbie. And this friend is actually the owner of an entertainment company, a female. And I asked her, how was the movie Barbie? I just asked her, well, how was the movie? And she said, I felt stupid after watching it. It's really weird. You have to watch it for yourself. I have no idea what I just watched, right? Which is quite interesting because, it is more about female empowerment too from many other females that told me about Barbie. And she's someone who owns her own company. So I thought she would definitely feel empowered by the movie and such, but she's kind of the first female to tell me that it was a terrible movie. Like, she had no idea what was going on, and she's like, it wasn't a very good movie at all. She felt stupid after. And then, I had another member, and it was a male, and they just watched Oppenheimer, and they're like, dude, it was so good, edge of your seat. So it's really, really interesting because you're kind of getting to see this split in just the ways guys and girls think. Right? Like, guys want to watch that type of stuff, right? We're not into the, oh my gosh, it looks so pretty. And, like, they have the setup. Like, you're not going to have an Oppenheimer, like, setup stage where there's, like, a nuclear bomb in the middle of the movie theater and everyone's taking pictures with these bombs. It's not like that, right? Like, if it was Cars, it'd be a little bit different. But it's like, you just kind of get to see what guys are into compared to what girls are into. You know what I mean? And like I told you guys yesterday that Rachel from Provipuff was telling me that she watched it twice and it was just a reason to go out and dress up more than the movie itself. So it's like females are super into Barbie and men are more into Oppenheimer generally from what I'm experiencing right now. And I think maybe it's just about interest. I don't think it might not even be the movie itself. Like, well, it's not so much we don't want to watch it. It's just we're not interested in it. Right? And, I look at some of these movies, there's like movies that are like hitting certain niches, and then there's like certain movies that are like all audiences. For instance, like an animation, way back in the past, you'd have like the Disney animations and stuff, or if you have an action movie or a comedy, like those are kind of all encompassing. It has a lot of people that are able to go to that, right? It can relate to a lot of people. And then some movies are working towards, I guess, niches. Like, Oppenheimer is like a biopic, right? So it's a little bit different. It's 3 hours and it's dialogue heavy, right? It's about a very serious subject. Barbie is definitely more towards women. However, I think that the way that Barbie marketed was perfect. I think it's perfect because it's everywhere on Instagram. Watched Barbie, Barbie movie, whatever it is, like those hashtags. Girls will go, but they're going to take their boyfriends, they're going to take their husbands, they're going to take their guy friends or their children to go watch the movie. And I think it's a super awesome marketing strategy, with especially with like all those pink movie sets you see inside the theaters where everyone is just taking pictures in there, like they're pretending to be a Barbie and stuff like that. And I think that is a genius idea. I really do. However, it still wouldn't convince me to go watch it. It just would. I'm just not interested in it. I think I'll watch it when it comes out streaming or something along that line. But like I said, guys, I still haven't got a single man or male. Not a single male has given me any idea about the movie or what they thought about it. So I'm kind of stuck in like, guys are not watching it or they're embarrassed to tell people they're watching it. I'm not sure what it is. So that is something that I thought was quite interesting. Before I get to the next subject about the Uber statistics and studying, remember there's a poll out, and I hope that you guys can kind of put your thoughts in what you think about what is the most important goal for you when you evangelize. At the moment, it's making people brides is 45%, salvation is 29%. Spread the gospel is 27, and then meet as many people as possible, and comments are 0. But it's all 100% is in the top 3: making brides, giving salvation, and spreading the gospel. And I think that is very, very interesting. And I do want to talk about that in the last episode of the week of what should be a proper goal, or what should be our mindset when we're getting into this, right? So I think it's something that we should think about very deeply too, because I don't think it's as easy as what we think it may be, right? And they're similar, but they're not the same to have as a goal. So make sure you go ahead. We've already got almost 60 people that have done that poll. Let's see if we can get up to 70 people if possible. So there's comments on, the Uber study, lots of comments on it, and especially because it's between guys and girls, and, it's something that we are thinking about a lot too, especially now that we have Man Cave and Provipuff and stuff like that. There's a lot of comments on the Uber study. Great comments from Alik, A-L-I-K, right? And she's also from Provipuff. And then also we have JFO, right? And JFO, she's someone that I've known like all my life in Providence too. And basically her comment said, I don't think it's just about ambition. Sadly, women probably don't take the night shift because of safety reasons. Sadly, this world is just unsafe for women, and if the woman is married with kids, unfortunately, she probably has to stay home with the kids at night, whereas a man is more free to do what he wants in the family and in the world. It's just a sad truth. Okay? So both Alik and, I'm not sure if you pronounce it Alik or Ali K. Oh, it's Ali. That's it. It's Ali K. Forget it. Okay, now I know, because I know her English name too. It's Ali K, right? And after getting their comments, I thought to myself one of the things that I should be doing more than like putting in opinions and stuff is looking at like real statistics of what like the research that is out there. I did send Ali the Harvard study on it too. And I did go into statistics looking at like America and Uber and what are the statistics out there. And it's very interesting when it comes to safety, right? Safety of men and women who are Uber drivers. And a lot of it really depends on what location you're at, right? But when I looked at how safe are Ubers, like how safe are they? And they say that this is America only, 99.9% of Uber rides are safe, 99.9%. So that's a very, very like high number. Like safety-wise, 99.9% is just under 100, like 0.1, right? And then if you want dangerous crimes, like for instance, rape or like sexual assault, that type of thing, for dangerous crimes and probably assault, carjackings, this type of thing, it is 0.0002%, right? So when you look at the statistics, it's a little bit different than what kind of the feeling about Uber is. Because, a lot of people are like, oh, but it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. But when you look at dangerous crimes, it's 0.0002% of Uber rides. And like there was like 1.3 billion rides that happened all over the US in, I think, the year 2022. And only 0.0002% are like dangerous crimes. And, this is the average, meaning some regions have more and some regions have less. Like, I'll give you one example. Baltimore is like very heavily, like it's got high crime rates. And at the beginning of 2022, in the first 2 months, they averaged one carjacking per day. Like that's pretty crazy, right? So that, that area or going into the city in Baltimore is probably not something you'd want to do as an Uber driver at night, right? But then statistics are Uber and Lyft are statistically safer for women than taxis. You know what I mean? So you are seeing that, the statistics are out there. And just to let you know why Uber and Lyft are statistically safer is, number one, is there's no cash in Uber or Lyft. These ride shares, there's no cash. So no one's going to come in here and take your cash because there is no cash to be exchanged. And secondly, all the drives are tracked. Everything is tracked, right? So that's what makes it... That's what makes it a little bit safer because taxis will exchange money and they're not tracked, right? So that's why Uber and Lyft are statistically safer for women than a taxi, right? And like I looked at it as like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And statistically, if you're thinking about your health as in carjackings, assaults, sexual assaults, it's only 0.0002%, which is extremely low. Which means you have a higher chance of getting sexually assaulted in a taxi. Like you have a higher chance of getting sexually assaulted in other areas that you're probably normally okay by doing, right? So that's something I found that was a very, very interesting statistic. And it is true. Most of these assaults and dangerous crimes are happening at night. And I was watching some YouTube channels. Like this is the thing I like about the comments. Is because once the comment comes out, I got to start looking it up. I'm looking it up. I'm looking at Uber YouTube channels, and they're talking about how safe some places are. What are the safest places for you to be an Uber driver at night, right? So it really, really depends. And there's like a lot of advice out there is if you're in the suburbs at night, do not take Uber. If you feel unsafe, do not take Uber rides into the city. Right, for some of the cities like Baltimore. And basically their opinion was always, if you're going to be driving at night, give yourself guidelines. Like, as sad as this sounds, they're like, do not take more than 2 passengers, right? Don't have more than 2 passengers at night after midnight. And it's not just any passenger, 2 male passengers, because this is where a lot of the crime is coming from, males, right? So they're like, yeah, do not take any, don't take more than like 1 or 2 passengers, or whatever your guideline is going to be, right? And of course, one of the big things about Uber is you don't have to take it, right? If you see something there, you could just cancel it and move on. If you feel anything, just move on and don't take it, kind of thing, right? So yeah, it's statistically, it's not really, the crime rate is much higher in our minds than it is statistically, right? And because of this is a very interesting statistic about Uber drivers, is that only 14% of Uber drivers are women, and Uber is they want more women, but they can't get them because women are just opting out, once again, because of safety issues. So I was reading an article on this, why women won't get into it, and it's safety issues, and it's more of the feeling is more unsafe than what has been stated. So if you knew the actual stats to what is actually real, it seems like it's a little bit over the feeling of it being unsafe is what's that word? Exaggerated in our hearts and our minds. And part of the reason is you're going to hear or see on the news horrific stories in the media or what others are saying about it, right? Like, for instance, I looked up the murder rate, right? So you have 1.3 billion Uber rides in 2022, and there was something along the line of 20 killings. 20 out of 1.3 billion. You know what I mean? So you're kind of looking at that as like, oh, so is it like, some people might say, well, 8 is still, or 20 people is still 20 people. And the honest answer is, then you should stop driving. You should probably stop driving because you'll have a higher chance of dying from that than from dying in an Uber kind of thing, right? So it's kind of something that we have to look at and look at it at the perspective of what is really happening. Because I think, don't you guys think that sometimes we're influenced by the media that shows something so horrific, then all of a sudden it over exaggerates in our mind and we think to ourselves, oh my gosh, it's that bad, I'm never going to do that again, kind of thing, right? Where the assault rate or the rate or the type of safety that women talk about is like sexual assault is 0.0002%, right? And, for me is like, there's going to be plenty of ways to avoid it. But, and the one thing about Uber is you can pick up the drivers only you want to pick up. You can drive, it's flexible. You want time that you want to drive, right? There's no cash. All rides are tracked. And that's why it's a lot safer that you can, even if it's 0.002%, you can make it even more safer. Kind of like what women are already doing in Uber is they are making sure they don't take the dangerous shifts. Early morning is fine. It's the night shifts, like going into midnight and stuff like that and on, right? And when I started to look at the statistics, it wasn't so much. Actually, what's something very interesting about another statistic that's interesting is that insurance companies are more willing to insure women than men. More willing because they drive slower and they have less accidents. Which, some of the guys were like, no way, because there's a stereotype that women are bad drivers. But, you can have two things true at the same time. You can be a bad driver and have less accidents. Oh, gosh, these stereotypes are crazy. But either way. I think in the end, like one of the things that Ali talked about, and which I thought was a good point is, what about people who only have as a part-time job? What about people who have families and they have to take care of their kids, right? Also, JFO also said the exact same thing. She was saying like, yeah, they have to take care of their kids at home, so they're not as free as a man, right? But I do think it's something that we could say men are more free too. However, if you look at the statistics, and even though we have a lot of different things going on, it looks more like, and I think this is true too, generally speaking, is men are more willing to take risks. Like, think about it. Imagine you're in Baltimore and there's a carjacking every single day, but men are still going out to make the money, and the girls choose not to. Even though, like men are going to have a higher chance of getting carjacked, a higher chance of getting assaulted, a higher chance of being robbed, more in the graveyard shift, but the vast majority of people driving at that time, they're making the choice to do that, right? And I would say, my opinion would be, it's because guys are providers, right? We want to provide. And imagine if I had children at home and my wife, I probably, because I want to provide and protect, I would make sure she doesn't go out, and I would rather go out instead of her. To make, to take that graveyard shift to make more money, I would rather go out than her. Like that would be something that me as a man would want to provide and protect, right? I'll do both things at the same time for that one. And yeah, women care more for safety. Women will take less risks. Women drive slower, right? And that's another stat from the Uber case study. And the women have less accidents, right? But why? And this is a good discussion point is from both JFO and Ali K. It's more important, from this, we can kind of get to see inside the minds of a male and a female. We get to look inside the minds, right? And I think this would be a great talk for Man Cave and Provipuff. I don't think this is not about any sex is better than the other. It's more of what is our natural behavior, right? Our natural behavior is who's going to take more risks, who's going to be the one that wants to make more money, right? Because there is a different mentality and mindset between men and women. And one of the biggest ones for men is provide and protect. That's what we want to do for our families, is provide and protect, right? So I found that to be very, very interesting that, yeah, there are a lot of variables behind the scenes, but it doesn't mean that the men don't have the same variables as the woman. Right? Because if we only say, well, woman, how do you know it's a part-time job? But that we could say the exact same thing about men. Oh, but what if they have a family at home? We could say the exact same thing about men, right? And it's just about how men and women make their choices and what's kind of the driving force behind it, which I thought was a very, very interesting thing when you kind of look at all the data and the stats out there, right? So, that's something I do think, I think more people will comment on these statistics also. But I do think it's going to be something where, it gets into other areas like why are more women into healthcare and why are more men into the STEM fields, right? And it has to do with interest, what they're interested in doing. So that is something that I think is a great topic and subject of what are the motivations and what are the things that make men and women do the things, make the choices that they make, right? So, yeah, so go ahead, guys. Take a look at those are some of the statistics I was looking up about how dangerous Uber driving is. But surprisingly, if it's only 0.0002%, then we could say that media or what we see in media plays such a large role that we could be making it out much, much more dangerous than it actually is. And I think people can avoid it. But even with that, it's about choice. Do women want to do it or not? Do men want to do it or not? Is it worth it to them or not? And you get to see that there's a difference in the behavior of men and women, right? Speaking of like scientific studies, there is something that I saw that was quite interesting for me. And it's the scientific evidence about how to avoid burnout. And that's something that people eventually get to the point, sometimes they're working so hard, they end up burning out, right? And they actually came up with a scientific amount of time to rest in a day, right? And guess what that is? It's a real scientific number, and it's very specific of how much time your brain and body needs to recover every single day. And guess what the number is? So in a 24-hour day, 42%. 42% of your day should be in rest. Right? Now, what does that mean? So you're thinking to yourself is like, whoa, that's like 10 hours a day. So you're saying 10 of the 24 hours should be in rest. Like, who can sleep for that long? So I was reading the study, and it's very, very interesting because it doesn't mean to sleep 10 hours a day. It means like most people will sleep anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a day, right? So where does the rest of the 2 to 4 hours come in of rest? And this is where they broke it down. They said, if we were to take it and to break things down, they would say 30 minutes of your day should be in stress-reducing conversation with trusted or loved ones, right? Stress-reducing conversation. So it's not yelling with your friends or arguing about, who's better, guys or girls or whatever it is like that. It's stress-reducing conversation with a trusted or loved one. The second one, the second type of rest there is exercise. Physical activity, going out for a walk, going for a run, exercising, playing sports, doing these types of things. Another thing that you can use, they said you can also do 30 minutes in a day of paying attention to food. And you're like, whoa, what do you mean by paying attention to food? And they said paying attention to food means you're focused only on the food. It's not while you're driving. It's not while you're working. It's not while you have any screen time, watching TV, listening to a podcast. It's strictly you and the food, and it takes your mind off all the things that are going on. You're paying attention just to the food itself, right? And then they said the last 30 minutes, like this is 2 hours right now, right, is for anything that you need more. It's kind of like the wild card 30 minutes, which means some people who are really health nuts, they want more exercise. Some people who are extroverts need more social time. Some people who are foodies should focus more on food. It allows your mind to wander. Like that's what it means for this time of rest. And I thought that was quite interesting. And another interesting point that they made was it's not about doing this every single day. It's about the average in a week. The average in a week, right? And that's why a lot of times the weekends are there to reduce all that stuff where you shouldn't just be constantly in that stress working mode, right? So when I heard this, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because sometimes when you're working, you work 8 hours a day, you get home, you're tired, you don't have all that time to start doing all those different activities like, going to exercise or, preparing for sleep. Like there's a lot of different things that you might not be able to do because you're just exhausted, right? So when I looked at that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That it's supposed to be the average for the entire week on a 7-day scale, which means 10 hours a day, which includes sleep. So if you're already sleeping like 6-7 hours, like 6 to 8 hours a day anyways, you're not catching up a whole lot. Like for instance, sometimes people will sleep in on Saturdays and sleep for like 10 hours, right? Which means you're already done for that day. And then it's a holiday, or not holiday, it's a weekend. So you can start going physical exercise. Like I play every Monday's basketball right now. That's 2 hours. 2 hours of the week is basketball. I work out like an hour and 15 minutes every day, almost every day, right? So even then, I'm putting in the time for these stress reducing things that will help me to not burn out, right? And I think that's something that not only we should think about for ourselves, but I also think it should be something that you should look at about your expectation for others, right? That they shouldn't be just burning the midnight oil all the time, right? Like think about your head leaders, think about your department leaders and everyone else who are doing these extra work for church also, that they do need that time of rest where we can help by giving a stress reducing conversation. We can go exercise with them. We can go eat together and just pay attention to the food, right? So I think it's something that we can definitely help each other with. But they said the magic number is 42%, meaning 10 hours a day in rest, which doesn't literally mean sleeping. All right. Well, some people might sleep 10 hours a day and you're already done. But yeah, I don't think everyone can do that. I don't think people can sleep 10 hours a day. It's just way too much. All right. So yeah, that was something I wanted to share with you guys. I hope it's something that will open your hearts and your minds a little bit more too. Okay. So we're going to get into our first break and then we'll go into the Q&A Thursday. So let's get into today's Q&A Thursday. We have two questions, and one of them comes from the YouTube comments. And I looked at their comments, and I thought it would be best for me to answer it here because this is the question. It says, "Hello, Pastor Sky. Would you mind sharing more insights about how Sunsteam formulates decisions or prays for guidance? In light of the few cases you mentioned, it seems Sunsteam makes decisions more ad hoc and can only rely on written facts regardless of context behind reports or individuals. I can fully understand that we shouldn't expect an all-powerful Sunsteam and should consider his humane perspective. However, I do expect he'll be able to manage the crowd at a higher level, so I believe Sunsteam will be connected to Trinity's massive database when praying, and he'll be able to offer simple guidance but after considering numerous facts. As these are only very few cases, I may have been misled. After all, if we can better understand the way Sunsteam prays and receives feedback, it could be very helpful for us to understand how to improve our prayer life. I appreciate your help," right? Awesome question, because yeah, it's something that I do think our minds do have to switch from. And I did talk about this a few days ago about how important the relationship between the leaders in Sunsteam are when it comes to these types of decisions, right? And what I'm going to say is, in order for us to really understand how decisions and how decisions are made and how Sunsteam, taps into the Holy Trinity's database so that we can make the right decision, right? And I think we need to look at it from one of the first principles we'll learn while learning the 30 lessons, which is the principle of magnification and miniaturization, right? Or you can look at it as, for instance, And you can also combine that with the the principle of repeating history. So if we want to know how God and the Holy Spirit are leading us and making their decisions, I think we need to look back at how God and the Holy Spirit have been making decisions in many different aspects of providence and the world history, right? So the very first thing I want to talk about to you, like the first type of way that we've been led by the Holy Trinity, first example that I want to give you is going to be the ambition masterpiece. Okay, so when you look at the ambition masterpiece, it took like 10 years to build, like to complete, right? And in those 10 years, how many times did it crumble? It crumbled 5 times, right? Because in the beginning, sometimes we didn't have the right equipment. Why? We were all using hands and these hand tools. We didn't have any of these huge excavators and huge equipment and tractors and stuff like that and forklifts. At that time, there wasn't even the right rocks, right? We didn't have the right amount of skill to make the ambition masterpiece in the very beginning either. And what had to happen was during the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, what was happening during the first 5 times the ambition masterpiece crumbled over the last like 10 years, well, not 10 years from now, but during the time it was being built, is several things had to come into play before the final result was made. And what does that mean? Well, even if God knows the exact answer of what's going to happen, but what if some of the variables are not ready? For instance, we didn't have the right equipment. So without the right equipment, could we, even if God gave us the right rocks, right? These huge, like 50-ton rocks with human hands and without the right equipment, were we able to actually build the ambition masterpiece? And the answer is absolutely not. But even when we get the right equipment, what happens next? We need to learn how to make this rock landscaping. And that took years to try to figure out how to make this rock landscaping that no other landscaping company has made before. If you remember in the first one, Sunseam hired a rock landscaping company to do it, but they were leaning all the rocks on their side. But Sunseam says, nope, we gotta raise them so they're upright. And they're like, no one does it that way. Which means this is a brand new way of building a rock landscaping, where not only do we need the right equipment, but we need the right skills. We need the knowledge, the know-how, how to do this, right? And every time the rocks fell over, those 5 times, we were learning, this is how we're supposed to do it. Let me give you an example. An example is, in the beginning, they would just set these rocks up and then they'd fall over, and then they'd realize, let's dig a hole. So they'd dig a hole and then put the rock inside the hole, and then they'd still fall over. And then, they would constantly try to upgrade and find better ways to make these rocks go upright. And finally, what Sunseam realized at the end is they dug these deep holes, then they put tiny rocks in there, and then they put the big rock inside of it. So what does that do? Well, the tiny rock's there, it stabilizes the big rock. It stabilizes it because now you have all these different rocks below, and they all have their sharp edges, and there's going to be friction. So even if rains come, even if these things happen, it keeps the rock up. So there was a know-how, a right amount of skill. And then finally at the very, very end, when all the skills were necessary and ready, what happens next? Well, the thing that happens next is you get the right rocks, right? Then the right rocks, the ones that are necessary to build the ambition masterpiece, are going to be given by God, right? Which means that when we look at how God created like even the ambition masterpiece, we see that these answers take time. So even if God has the absolute answer for us right now, like he's not going to give it to us until all the variables are ready and made, which means sometimes it requires us to be trained, right? Sometimes it requires us to have a decision made by God towards us that we're learning from it, right? So just like that, like think about this. The experience I gave you when it came to me, all of a sudden getting a letter from Sunseam, and then all of a sudden, then we send a letter out and Sunseam says, oh no, you can stay as a head leader. Like for me that is such a valuable experience for me that I can teach everyone else, but I can learn myself, this is the way we're supposed to be doing it. You know what I mean? Because imagine in the future, I never learned that skill. I never learned about that. And then I continue as a head leader. Every time Sunseam brings a letter, no discussion. I just believe that that's what it is. We're done kind of thing, right? So we need to see that there's no magic bullet where there's one shot, it's all done, unless all the, it's like the perfect condition, the perfect storm is there. And, everything depends on the level, our situation, our circumstance. And the example I gave was very specific and has to do with like certain individuals and how we're reported about the individuals. And I would say that every situation, circumstance may be different, right? Will God lead us in the right direction? Absolutely. Do we have a responsibility as part of it? Absolutely, because God can give us the right answer and still yet we may not do it. We may not put it into action. So that will be another reason why it wouldn't work. There's another reason it might not work is because we're still in the process of, raising the level of something at that time. And I think a lot of us have gone through those experiences where we've gone through a very difficult time, but we realize later it was so necessary for us to reach the next level, right? And I think that's something where we look at, the miniaturization, like look at how God built the Ambition Masterpiece. Look at how God builds the Old Testament. It took 4,000 years. The New Testament took 2,000 years. Nothing was like instantaneous. And that's another principle that we learned in 30 Principles called the principle of gradual history. Things take time, especially the bigger things. And the way that I see it is this. When you learn the predestination lecture, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I took from it, when it says there's absolute predestination, those are the things that have to happen no matter what. For instance, salvation is going to happen no matter what. It's going to happen, right? Salvation will happen. That is the end goal. God is going to win. That is an absolute predestination. It is the will of God, and that's something we know, that God is leading the big picture. But part of the big picture has to do with human responsibility, which means we are still being led in that right direction. But inside that will, because there's human responsibility, we don't know who's actually going to be saved. Yes, salvation will happen. Everyone gets their opportunity, but we don't know who's going to be saved because it depends on human responsibility, which when we look at this, we can say that the large direction is definitely guided by God. And no matter what, we're going in that direction, and no matter what, God is leading us towards that place. However, when it comes to our human responsibility, there are small things inside the will that go good and go bad. For instance, Jesus going to the cross, that was because of human responsibility. But did that stop salvation from occurring? And the answer is absolutely not. So I would say that definitely God is leading us in the right direction. God is in control of all things. However, we do have a responsibility of how great or what path or direction it'll be taken on. Like salvation was made at the time of Jesus. It was just taken on plan B towards the cross, right? And because of that, people will look at it and say, oh, God's will was fulfilled. Absolutely. But was it fulfilled the absolute best and most ideal way that God wanted? No, humans played a role in that. But the direction still was made where everyone, where salvation was given to the world. So when it comes to this, I'm giving you just a small example. But if we want to look at how God leads us, it's very, very interesting that a lot of times, regardless if our situation is good or bad, we're always led to the point where like, oh my gosh, God help me to get here through the dark times, because through that dark times I learned. Or we'd be like, oh my gosh, I did exactly what God told me to do, and that's why I'm successful. So regardless of you're successful or not in putting the words into action, we are reaching a goal, but it's just a matter of what level we reach that goal to. So I would say that this is how God is going to be leading us at the higher level, and we're going in the direction that God wants. But we do need to know that the human responsibility does play a role in it, and that's something that we have to fulfill. So let's just say that God's will is towards salvation and God's going to win. We know that, right? But inside God's will, you have your church, which is a very, very small part of God's will, obviously, right? You can't say that your church is like the make or break of God's will. And then inside your church, you have a lot of different things going on, where how many people will be evangelized, how many people are going to be saved. And if we do make mistakes and we don't report well in a church setting, it's just going to take longer to get to the right leader. If we're using the example that I used is, if we don't report well, we'll have the wrong leader put in place, right? Or, we may be thinking something is God's will, but it's not because the reporting was done wrong. So eventually we will get to the right leader, but it depends how many people are hurt, how long it takes, how many people are hurt along the way, and how wisely we do it. But we'll still get to the will that's necessary. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I don't think, yeah, I wouldn't say that, like, oh no, then Sunseem's, he's only basing it on those things. I would say that that would be more for these miniaturized micro events where it has to do with like a single individual or a personal decision. Because that's a personal thing, which you need personal details, right? But when it comes to the will of God, it's more general, and it's about where is the direction of this history going? What is the vision of this history kind of thing? So, yeah, I think we have to look at it in that way and not looking too much towards like, oh, is everything like that? No, God is managing the crowds at a much higher level. And if I were to give you an example of how to manage crowds and how to manage individuals, I would say with lecturing. When I lecture an individual, I can talk about their individual things they're going through in life, right? Yeah, and I need to figure those things out. And I can give you a lesson based on that individual's life. Very, very catered towards an individual. However, if I'm doing a speaking event for, let's say, 200 people, or even one time I did in Korea for 1,400 people, right? I can't go into specifics because it has to relate to the entire crowd. And great example would be Sunday message is general, the general direction of what's happening in the week. And then the Wednesday message is more catered to the details of the message and stuff, right? So when it comes to leading the crowd at a higher level, yeah, Sunseem is connected to the Trinity's massive database when he's praying, and he's able to lead this entire Providence nation in the right direction. And the smaller and smaller it becomes, like where it comes to a country, to a region, to a church, to a very individual, just like me teaching a lecture one-on-one, I need to know more details in order to cater that lecture towards that person, where in a large group, I would need to know the general consensus, right? It's the same thing as statistics on men and women. Most, like, women are more emotional than men is a generalization, a true generalization. Not all women are more emotional than men. Some men are more emotional than women. That is true at the individual level. However, at the generalized level, it is true that women are more empathetic. Women have more emotional IQ and all these other different things, generally speaking, right? So this is why we want to be able to understand. We need to understand how God leads us in this way. So I hope it's not like people are feeling that, oh no, then are we being misled sometimes for this and this because he doesn't know all the nuances and all the context behind it. And I would say when it becomes very, very specific, the more specific detail he needs. And when it becomes more general, like when people are doing marketing, you can't market to an individual. You market to the crowd, right? And that's why when we see God managing the crowd and how Sunseem does it, it's going to be done in a very wise way that's for a crowd to be led by, if that makes sense. So if that makes sense, please let me know, because I know that was one of the questions that came up in the comment section, and that's something that I really wanted to answer today, that we can always find the answers through these amazing principles like Sunseem gave of, the principle of repeating history, the principle of miniaturization, magnification, the principle of repeated history, right? They're all out there, right? Gradual history, repeated history, all these principles. There's like 6 major principles that we learn from the 30 lessons. So, and I hope it's something that we can all learn from and glean from also. All right, so let's get into the second. The second question is something that I'm going to bring up to you guys. All right, this is a question that I want to share with you guys because I had a very interesting experience yesterday. I had a conversation last night on my DMs, and there was an ex-member, and they didn't tell me their name. And at the beginning, I was a little bit suspicious, but they said it's someone I knew, and they said we were connected in the past, and I believe they have left Providence. But they wanted to ask me some questions about this, the spiritual Oppenheimer and stuff. And I was really happy that they reached out to me. And and here's the thing. Like for me, I do believe that all of us here right now, we are not here to judge the people that leave. We're not here to say that, oh, I can't believe they did this. And it's not even our main goal to like try to save them again. You're like, what? You're not trying to save them? And the answer is not right now. right? Like, of course, we want to save people. We want everyone to come back, but we also have to realize that there's a time where people are ready to come back, which means that we have to think more long-term than short-term, right? Because we are the mediators for these people in the history, those who are unsure and those who have left this history, right? Especially because of the spiritual Oppenheimer we just went through. So this person said to me they were very apprehensive at first to even reach out to me because of experiences that they've had or heard of other people trying to, oh, I need to save this person, and they're just really trying to convince them and influence them to come back. And I looked at it and said, yeah, that's so true. Sometimes we have that mindset. We're just so desperate for these people. Like, oh, I can't believe you left. How could you leave? Or we might say things that are insensitive to them, right? So the thing I'm going to bring up to you guys is, how do we talk to people who have left, right? But they're still kind of curious about what is happening. But think about it. This person's left, but they still have the courage to reach out to me and ask how things are going or what my feelings are or what I went through. So my question is, how do we talk to these people who have left, who are unsure, but still curious or might still have like a chance, right? So let me talk to you. I'll tell you a couple of things that I did to help talk to this person. And I think this is something that's very, very important. And like I said, number one is my number one goal, my number one thing in my mind, my mentality is not to change or influence their minds. I'm not there to convince them to come back. I'm not there to convince them to say, oh, but you didn't know about this, did you? You didn't know. No, that's not. Because we all know what Sunseam says. If someone comes back, it's in God's timing. Sometimes it takes 1 year, sometimes 3 years, sometimes 7 years, sometimes 21 years. Like, they have to have that time before they can come back. Which means if we know that there's a time for people to kind of, to digest everything that's happened and then they'll make a decision to come back, sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it's instantaneous, but sometimes it does take some time. And because we're not God, we cannot assume that this means, oh, they're coming back and I'm the one going to bring them back right now. My number one thing is when I talk to people who are unsure or left, my goal is not to convince them, to change their hearts and their minds, to influence them and such. My main goal is to inform and give personal opinions of what are my thoughts on it, right? I'm not going to try to form my thoughts and talk to them in a way that convinces them to come back, right? I'm not going to even say things like, you should think about it again, or you shouldn't have left, or if you just waited a little longer, you would get more answers. Because once you say you're pointing a finger, and it becomes way too personal and something that can feel like I am talking about them or judging them, right? So one of the best things that I've learned and realized because of my mistakes as being a head leader and a leader in the past is I don't want to be the one that speaks first. Right? I don't want to say anything because the moment I say something is the moment I assume I'm assuming what they're about to ask me, or I'm assuming what they don't know. So if anything else, I will let them speak their heart and mind first, right? Let them ask the questions because those are the things they're struggling with, or those are the things that they're trying to figure out, right? If I speak first, it's more aggressive for the situation, right? Someone's reaching out to me, they may feel judged by me and they're not going to talk to me anymore if I'm speaking first, like, oh, well, did you hear about this? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about this? Hey, did you wait? How long? Why did you make it? That's not a very wise way to do it. It's not a very empathetic way of doing it either. So while talking to this person, they began to ask me some questions about what do I feel about the situation in Providence? What just happened? And for me is, once again, I'm not assuming what they know. So I asked, do you know the latest updates? And I put 3 points, right? 3 points. Do you know the latest updates? Number one is the audio forensics on the Netflix audio. 2, updates on Sunsteam and AJ's trial, right? 3, I put those points down. So do you know these updates? 'Cause I have no idea what they know. And then they said, oh, I didn't see this stuff and I try not to look at these things. And I'm like, oh, it's fair enough. And then I told them, yeah, this is what is going on. I keep up to date with these things, the protests that are happening like this. And, there's a lot of new news that have come up, new information that's come up since March. It's been 4.5 months now, right? And then they continue to ask me more questions. How did I feel? What was my reaction? And I do it in a way where I'm not there to, like I said, I'm not there to influence or convince anyone. It's about information, and it's non-emotional, and I give out the information. I go through, like when I do mental exercises here on, I do mental exercises on this channel, right? Yeah, I do go through them. And when I go through these mental exercises, I say, yeah, this is what I'm thinking right now. These are the thoughts that I went through. I've been through this in the past, so I kind of like, it's not something that's really scaring me right now. This has happened before. And I just kind of share with them what I know. And then in the end, we're fine. It's like, maybe we'll do, they're like, oh, okay, we can do voice notes the next day. And I'm like, that's great. I'm fine with that too. And today I just wanted to share with you is kind of what is the mentality we need when we're talking to people who are struggling or people who have left already, but you can tell that, they're still reaching out, which means they want to figure out what people are thinking too, right? Because it is a huge decision. It's a place where if you believe, you know where we're going. And if you leave, then you know where you're going there too. And you have to be 100% sure, right? You have to be 100%. And this is why we need to kind of bring in that love. The love has to come forth, and we really need to care about these people. And even if they don't believe it, even if they're not influenced or we're not trying to do that, they get the information, they're like, oh, okay. That is, I'm a big advocate of free will. Free will. They make their choices. And I know that God is a huge advocate of free will. How do I know? Because if he wasn't, why would he give it in the first place? Right? Free will allows someone not to believe in God. Free will allows someone to sin, to go against God, to reject God. That's what free will is. It's all part of love. And we have to understand that, yeah, it's free will. Let them do what they want. That's their choice. Can I influence them? And the answer is, you could, but the best influence we have over anyone is just love. We just gotta love these people, right? And when the time comes where maybe it's for some people, like 3 years later, 7 years later, 14 years later, whatever it is, they will remember the love that they received regardless of how they felt and whatnot. And we'll be those that will just say, oh, okay, here it is. And we allow them to understand it at a much deeper and higher level too. Right, so that is something that I hope that that we will really get our hearts and minds to think more deeply of, and really help people to understand that we're not here, we're not here to judge, we're not here to say things against them, but I really, really hope that we can build a community of love that regardless of people make the choice to leave or anything else, that we're not going to be judging, and we're not going to be those like trying to influence and convince them and get into arguments and such. Let's just love them and give them the information that they need. Are they going to be convinced? I don't know. Is it their time? Only God knows. And because only God knows, we have to treat each and every person and without prejudice, without discrimination, just, this is what I believe. This is what I know. Right? And this is going to be something I think that all of us can benefit from when it comes to talking to other people who are struggling or may have left because of this situation too. All right. So that was the second question that I brought up. And that was for myself after the experience I had yesterday. And I hope it's something that you guys can experience also. All right. So that means let's get into the second break of the day.
Ever since I met you, I just feel like a winner. I don't want to stop. SB, let's get it. Yeah. Every day I feel like I'm a winner. We just eating every time it's dinner. You're the realest trophy that I have. Everybody wishes what I have. I really want to get to know you. Nothing feels like winning if we aren't together. I really want to get to know you. When you are with me, everything is better. I really want to get to know you. I take the time out just to show you. I don't need to pick petals off a flower just to say that I adore you. I chill with you till the sun goes down. When I'm with you, my world goes round. When you call, I come around. Even in the crowd, you're the only one I see. The others try to catch my eye, just know you're for me. I hope they know they can't compete. Now my head is in the zone. When I'm with you, not alone. I never let
let you go. You're everything to me. Together we're not losing. No way.
Every day I feel like I'm a winner. Ay. We just eating every time it's dinner. Ay. You the realest trophy that I have. Ay. Everybody wishes what I have. I really wanna get to know you. Nothing feels like winning if we aren't together. I really wanna get to know you. When you are with me, everything is better. It's special every time when I'm around you. I feel like there's just something different about you. You always bring the best out of me. No limits to this love I can see. No limits when I'm on eagle's wings. Nobody touching us when we win. When lovers become one, they don't lose. I don't play no games, not with you. Every day I feel like I'm a winner. We just eating every time it's dinner. You the realest trophy that I have. Everybody wishes what I have. Every day I feel like I'm a winner. We just eating every time it's dinner. You the realest trophy that I have. Everybody wishes what I have. I really wanna get to know you. Nothing feels like winning if we aren't together. I really wanna get to know you. When you are with me, everything is better.
Together and never apart. I love spending time with you.
Okay, so let's get into our final segment on this Thursday podcast. And I'm going to be, I don't have actually any like an actual sermon to preach today, but there is something that I heard on a podcast that really resonated, and I think it's something that a lot of us should take into consideration of the time that we're living in right now. And like, this is not going to be a sermons in the sky. This is just something, words of encouragement for everyone here. One of the things that I was listening to, the speaker said, if you look at all the bad days that you went through in your life, right? You know, when we always come up to these bad days in life, like terrible days. And what are our thoughts? Our thoughts, man, I'm not going to get through this. It's going to be tough. You know, God, am I going to make it? And especially with the spiritual Oppenheimer, a lot of us did think that, man, Providence is dead. Providence is gone. Some people actually thought those things, and that's why some people left. And a lot of us were kind of like wondering, what's going to happen next? Because it was so crazy when that happened in March. And the one thing that this speaker was saying was, you have to realize that you have survived 100% of the bad days you have gone through in your life. You have never not overcome it. You've survived 100% of every single bad day that you went through. And when we think about this spiritual Oppenheimer, yeah, we did face these difficult days and times. And a lot of times we think like, what's going on? Where is God? But just the fact, like think about it, if we've made it 100% through all the difficult times, including the spiritual Oppenheimer that happened in March, how much was God really with us? You know, this is something that will help us to understand when we have doubts and when we have shakings in our faith. The days, no matter how bad it is, God will be with us. And like the past, we have never not made it. We've always overcome. We've always pushed through. 100% of the bad days we have overcome, or we wouldn't be here right now. Are you going through a really difficult time right now? Maybe not just faith, could be financially, right? Could be with your family, could be with your friends, could be relationships, just so many things we could be going through. The one thing we have to keep in mind how much God has been with us is that we have never succumbed to the bad days. We have always made it through. And I hope that, these words of, affirmation, or just knowing that we're going to make it through this too. We're 100% we're going to make it through it just like we made it through before. And I hope that all of us will be able to take that into mind whenever these bad days come. And that's kind of one of the small things I wanted to share with you guys, just to encourage you guys, knowing that, God has been with us. He will always be with us, and we're going to make it, and we're going to pull through this no matter how impossible it feels. All right. So that's kind of like that final comment I wanted to make today. I didn't do a real sermons in the sky, but I thought this was something that would encourage and help everyone to realize, this time we're going to make it through just like we made through it in the past. All right. So there it is, guys. That is today's Sermons in the Sky. The last segment today, just a short affirmation, short encouragement for all of you guys out there. And I hope that we can have an amazing, amazing last day. Not the last day. It's the last of the meat of the week, right? And then tomorrow's the last day before the weekend comes. Everyone, enjoy your Thursday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone.